When you think of Ozzy Osbourne, you probably picture the Prince of Darkness, the godfather of heavy metal, the guy who bit the head off a bat. For over 50 years, he's been the wild, untamable spirit of rock and roll. His voice basically defined a genre, and his antics became the stuff of legend. You see the leather, the crucifixes, the maniacal stare, and you think you know him. You think you know the exact sounds that forged this icon of metal. But what if I told you the playlist that shaped this rock, God, wasn't just filled with heavy, metal thunder? What if the soundtrack to Ozzy's soul was built from foundations far more diverse and way more surprising than you could ever imagine? From pop icons that would shock the most die-hard metalheads to punk rebels you'd never expect, we're counting down the top 6 bands Ozzy Osbourne loved the most. This isn't just a list of influences. This is a peek into the personal record collection of a man who, underneath it all, is just a massive music fan. These are the artists who made him want to grab a microphone, the anthems that became his personal religion, and the songs he turned to in his quietest moments. And trust me, the band at number 1 will change the way you see the madman forever. Coming in at number 6 is a band that, on the surface, seems like a pretty logical choice for the Prince of Darkness, the pure, high-voltage rock and roll machine from Down Under, AC/DC. It's impossible to imagine hard rock without them, and for Ozzy, their appeal was primal and immediate. He didn't just see them as contemporaries, he saw them as absolute masters of the riff. Ozzy often described AC/DC's music with a simple yet perfect phrase, meat and potatoes. In his eyes, there was no pretense, no messing around, just raw, undeniable power. He once said, "There is no bollocks, there is no fucking around. Whether you like them or you don't, and I'm proud to say I love them." This straightforward, no-nonsense approach is exactly what captivated him. While Black Sabbath was pioneering the darker, more complex side of heavy metal, Ozzy found himself drawn to AC/DC's infectious, almost danceable groove. "When I was in Sabbath," he recalled, "I used to say, why don't we try doing a fucking danceable kind of riff? You could bang your head all day and night and not get fed up." His admiration for the band, and particularly for guitarist Angus Young, was off the charts. He saw Angus as a force of nature, a relentless engine of rock energy. "Angus is like a machine that never stops," Ozzy declared. "He keeps going and going. He's still got the fucking energy, man." Coming from a guy famous for his own manic stage presence, that compliment carried some serious weight. Ozzy first witnessed this energy firsthand when AC/DC opened for Black Sabbath on tour in the 70s. Even then, he was blown away by their intensity, wondering how they could possibly keep it up night after night. Years later, he'd still marvel at it, saying there's no one to touch Angus Young for that groove. But Ozzy's love for AC/DC was about more than just riffs and energy. He had a profound respect for their late, great frontman, Bon Scott. While Ozzy has been clear that he thinks Brian Johnson is a fantastic singer, his heart belongs to his old friend. "I love Brian Johnson," he stated in a 2017 interview, "but to me, my good friend, the late Bon Scott, was the best singer AC/DC ever had." He considered the 1979 album, Highway to Hell, Bon's final masterpiece, to be an absolute addiction. It was a perfect storm of razor-sharp riffs and Scott's uniquely gritty, charismatic delivery. For Ozzy, Bon Scott was the definitive voice of AC/DC. The connection wasn't always smooth sailing. There's a famous story of AC/DC getting kicked off a tour with Sabbath after a fiery argument between Geezer Butler and Malcolm Young. But friendships often outlasted any professional squabbles. Ozzy's love for the band never wavered. They were, in his words, a really great bunch of guys, real people. And that authenticity was the core of their appeal. In a world full of rock and roll theatrics, AC/DC was pure, uncut truth, and that's something the Prince of Darkness has always revered. At number 5, we've got a band that shares more than just a genre with Ozzy. They share a hometown. Hailing from the same industrial heartland of Birmingham, England, Judas Priest holds a special place in Ozzy's world. This isn't just about musical influence, it's about a shared identity, a bond forged in the smoke and steel of the city that gave birth to heavy metal. Ozzy has never been shy about his love for Judas Priest, often calling them one of the greatest heavy metal bands of all time. He sees them not just as peers, but as mates who came from the exact same working-class background. This shared origin story is key to understanding their connection. Both Black Sabbath and Judas Priest clawed their way out of a landscape of post-war bleakness, and their music was a powerful, thunderous escape. Ozzy recognized that same fighting spirit in Priest's music. When Rolling Stone asked him to name his favorite metal albums in 2017, Ozzy immediately pointed to Judas Priest's 1980 classic, British Steel. He couldn't say enough good things about it. What can I say? The guys in Judas Priest are not only mates of mine from my hometown of Birmingham, but one of the best metal bands of all time. This album had Living After Midnight, Breaking the E, Law and Metal Gods. British Steel is a classic that will definitely stand the test of time. For Ozzy, this album wasn't just a collection of hits, it was a definitive statement. It had the anthems, the attitude, and the sonic power that defined the genre for a new decade. His respect runs deep for the band's legendary frontman, Rob Halford. The Metal God and the Prince of Darkness are two of the most iconic voices in metal, and Ozzy holds Halford in the absolute highest esteem. In a video tribute for Judas Priest's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in 2022, Ozzy seemed almost awestruck by Halford's vocal power. "He can still hit the fucking notes," Ozzy said, "which is mind-blowing to me. He is one of my favorite fucking singers." That's high praise from a man who knows exactly the toll that decades of performing can take on a voice. The bond was so strong that they had planned to tour together in what would have been an epic celebration of Birmingham metal, a tour that, sadly, had to be canceled due to Ozzy's health. The mutual respect was obvious. When Ozzy made the tough call to retire from touring, Halford supported him completely, telling a magazine, "He made the right call. Put your feet up. You've earned it." What Ozzy seems to admire most about Judas Priest is their unwavering dedication to heavy metal. For over 5 decades, they've flown the flag, never compromising and never straying from the path they helped create. They represent the strength and resilience of the genre. They are, like him, lifers in the army of rock and roll. Placing the band he co-founded on a list of bands he loves might seem obvious, but Ozzy's relationship with Black Sabbath is way too complex for that. Coming in at number 4 is not just a band, but the very fire in which the Prince of Darkness was forged. His love for Black Sabbath is the love a creator has for his creation. It's tangled up with pride, pain, frustration, and an unbreakable, lifelong bond. Black Sabbath wasn't just a job for Ozzy, it was his identity. It was 4 young guys from Aston, Birmingham, with nothing to lose, who stumbled upon a sound that would change the world. They didn't set out to invent a genre. They were just trying to write music that sounded like the bleak, industrial world around them. They wanted to create the musical version of a horror film, and in doing so, they birthed heavy metal. Ozzy has always spoken with huge pride about those early days and the earth-shattering impact of their first few albums, like Black Sabbath, Paranoid, and Master of Reality. Even after his ugly split from the band in 1979, a time filled with personal demons and conflict, the love for what they created never really died. Getting fired was a painful and pivotal moment that could have easily turned his love into permanent bitterness. And for a while it did. But as years went by, pride in their shared legacy started to overshadow the hurt. He has often said that the chemistry between him, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of dark magic that could never be copied. The reunions, especially the final one for their farewell tour, The End, proved how deep that connection was. Standing on stage with his old mates, singing the songs that started it all, was a deeply emotional experience for him. He told a roaring crowd during one of their final shows, "It's so good to be on this F.G. stage. You have no idea. I love you all." It was a raw, heartfelt declaration from a man coming full circle. Still, his love for Sabbath isn't simple. He's been open about the creative tensions, especially with Tony Iommi, the riff man. While he worshipped Tony's ability to conjure those monstrous riffs, their personalities often clashed. Yet, even in his complaints, there's always an undercurrent of respect. In a way, his entire solo career was a reaction to his time in Sabbath. He wanted to bring more melody to the darkness, something he felt was sometimes missing in their later work. But the foundation, the very DNA of his musical being, was cast in the Sabbath forge. To love Black Sabbath for Ozzy is to love a fundamental part of himself. If there's one person in rock and roll who could be called Ozzy's spiritual brother, it was Ian "Lemmy" Kilmister. So it's no surprise that at number 3 we find his band, the loud, ferocious, and totally uncompromising Motorhead. Ozzy's love for Motorhead was completely tied to his deep and lasting friendship with Lemmy. It was a bond that went way beyond music, built on mutual respect, shared chaos, and a gut-level understanding of what it meant to live life on your own terms. Ozzy saw Motorhead as the purest expression of rock and roll. They were, in his words, the pirates of the rock business. They didn't fit in with the polished mainstream, and they didn't quite fit in with the metal scene either. They were their own thing, raw, fast, and unapologetically loud. Ozzy chose their legendary 1980 album, Ace of Spades, as one of his all-time favorite metal records, feeling the title track was Motorhead's Paranoid, their own defining anthem. The friendship between Ozzy and Lemmy started back in the 70s, when Lemmy was in Hawkwind and the two bands rehearsed in the same building. Their bond was cemented when Motorhead opened for Ozzy on his first U.S. solo tour in 1981. It was a famously wild tour with both camps pushing the limits of rock and roll excess. Ozzy recalled being amazed by Lemmy's stamina, asking him when he'd last slept. Lemmy just casually replied, 10, 12 days ago. They were kindred spirits, but their connection went deeper than just partying. Lemmy became a crucial creative partner for Ozzy during the making of his 1991 album, No More Tears. Ozzy was struggling with lyrics, so Sharon Osbourne called up Lemmy for help. Lemmy came over, and in a ridiculously short amount of time, wrote the lyrics for 4 of the album's biggest songs: Mama, I'm Coming Home, I Don't Want to Change the World, Desire, and Hellraiser. Ozzy was blown away, joking that Lemmy wrote the lyrics faster than he could sing them. The perfect story to capture their dynamic is when an interviewer told Ozzy that Mama, I'm Coming Home revealed his true soul, only for Ozzy to bluntly reply, Lemmy wrote it. After Lemmy's passing in 2015, Ozzy was devastated, calling him one of his best friends and a true hero. He was my hero, Ozzy told Rolling Stone. He was fucking great, a good friend. He was a warrior and a legend. I will see you on the other side. To honor him, Ozzy later released a special duet of Hellraiser, blending his vocals with Lemmy's in a powerful tribute. For Ozzy, his love for Motorhead is inseparable from his love for Lemmy. It's a love for the man, the music, and the unwavering spirit of rock and roll that he was. At the number 2 spot is a band that represents something more than just influence. They represent a kind of rock and roll divinity. For Ozzy Osbourne, Led Zeppelin weren't just another band. They were, in his own words, gods. Their music hit him with the same seismic impact as the band that would take the top spot on this list. The connection is personal, rooted in a shared time and place, and colored by a sense of awe that's never faded. Both Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin formed in 1968, crawling out of the industrial grid of England to redefine rock music. The members, of both bands knew each other before they were famous. Ozzy remembered seeing Robert Plant around Birmingham just as he was joining a new group called the New Yardbirds, the band that would soon become Led Zeppelin. There was a sense of kinship, two groups of young guys from the Midlands about to change the world. When Zeppelin's first two albums dropped in 1969, they were a total revelation for Ozzy and his bandmates in the not-yet-recorded Black Sabbath. Ozzy said their debut album was like a great breath of fresh air, something completely different and incredibly heavy. The impact was immediate. He said, "The first two albums had such an impact on my voice and on my life, similar to the Beatles when I first heard them." Hearing the sheer power of Zeppelin helped solidify the direction Sabbath was already heading. Ozzy apparently told Tony Iommi how heavy Zeppelin was, and Iommi famously vowed that Sabbath would be even heavier. Ozzy's admiration was especially focused on two members. He was mesmerized by John Bonham's drumming, considering him a primal force. He'd sneak into Zeppelin gigs just to watch him play, later saying, "Bonham didn't play drums, he attacked them." He also held Robert Plant's voice in the highest regard, listing him among the greatest singers ever. The friendship between the bands was real, with Zeppelin even visiting Sabbath in the studio during the recording of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath for a legendary now-lost jam session. While the media often tried to paint them as rivals, Ozzy's reverence for Zeppelin was always clear. He saw them as being on another level entirely. He once admitted that Zeppelin could be a bit dismissive, acting like they were on a different plane of existence, but their attitude didn't diminish his respect for their music. To him, they had earned the right to be confident. He saw their music not just as an influence, but as a benchmark of greatness, calling all of their studio work classic. For Ozzy, Led Zeppelin represented the absolute pinnacle of rock and roll power, and now we arrive at number one. After a journey through the heaviest, loudest, and most rebellious sounds in rock history, the band that Ozzy Osbourne loves most of all might be the biggest shock. It isn't a metal band. It isn't a hard rock band. The number one spot, the most sacred space in Ozzy's musical heart, belongs to four lads from Liverpool, the Beatles. For the self-proclaimed Prince of Darkness, the Beatles weren't just a band. They were a life-altering event. He has stated over and over again that they are his all-time favorite and the entire reason he became a musician. The story is a key part of his personal legend. He was a young man walking down a road in his hometown of Aston, holding a small transistor radio. And then a song came on that changed everything. That song was "She Loves You." When that song came on, I knew from then on what I wanted to do with my life, Ozzy has explained. It had such an impact on me. This was so brand new, and it gave me a great feeling. I owe my career to them. For Ozzy, this moment was like a religious experience. He's famously described its effect with a powerful analogy. "My son says to me, 'Dad, I like the Beatles, but why do you go so crazy?' The only way I can describe it is like this. Imagine you go to bed today and the world is black and white, and then you wake up and everything's in color. That's what it was like. That's the profound effect it had on me. This wasn't just about catchy tunes." For a working-class kid from a dreary industrial city, the Beatles represented hope. They showed him that four regular guys from a similar background could conquer the world. They gave him a blueprint for his dreams. And while Black Sabbath's music would travel to far darker places, the core of what Ozzy strived for was rooted in what he learned from the Beatles: melody. "The thing about the Beatles," he said, "was they always had the best melodies. All I've tried to do in my career is put a melody to a dark riff." His adoration was especially centered on John Lennon. Ozzy saw him as a poet, a rebel, and a genius. He's covered several of Lennon's solo songs and even said his own song Dreamer was his attempt at writing his version of Imagine. Lennon's death in 1980 completely devastated him. "My world just fucking stopped," he recalled. Meeting Paul McCartney years later was, in Ozzy's words, like meeting Jesus Christ. He was so starstruck he could barely get a word out. This genuine fan-like adoration for the Beatles reveals the true heart of Ozzy Osbourne. The man who became a symbol of darkness found his guiding light in the bright, revolutionary pop melodies of the Beatles. They were and remain his musical North Star. So, from the raw power of AC/DC to the revolutionary pop of the Beatles, Ozzy Osbourne's musical world is far richer and more varied than most people would ever guess. It just goes to show that a great song is a great song, no matter the genre. The Prince of Darkness is, first and foremost, a true lover of music. What do you think? Which band on this list surprised you the most? Let us know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look into the mind of a rock legend, you know what to do. The playlist of Ozzy's life is proof that great artists are often built from a complex mix of influences. His love for the brutal honesty of Motorhead, the godlike power of Led Zeppelin, and the hometown pride of Judas Priest all make perfect sense. But it's his deep, foundational love for the Beatles that truly sheds light on the artist behind the icon. It proves that the godfather of heavy metal was born from a spark of pure pop melody. These 6 bands didn't just provide a soundtrack for his life. They gave him the language he would use to build his own immortal legacy.